Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 6:30.
WMAL.
7:37 on WMAL. Brian Neiman, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson. We're all here bright and early, even though we were up last night very late watching the heated debates. Pleased to have Andrew Klavan in the house this morning, award-winning author, screenwriter, media commentator, provocateur. Did I miss anything in that?
All around pain in the neck.
All around pain in the neck. Yeah, I'm sure he's gotten his fair share of emails over the Anthony Weiner column that you wrote. We won't get into that anyway. Got a new book out, The Final Four, which is the final installment of your Homelander series.
Like the final hour. It's the last
final hour. I'm sorry, the final hour. It was like a basketball on the final hour.
It's still early, yeah.
So it all comes full circle here. We finally find the ending. So.
It is. It started out 4 books ago. Charlie West, a teenager, went to sleep in his own bed one night, woke up tied to a chair, about to be murdered by Islamo-fascist terrorists. And when he got out of that predicament, he found he was wanted by the police for murder. So he's been looking for what happened.
I just hate it when that happens.
I hate it when that happens.
Right.
This is a usual Friday night for me, but it takes Charlie by surprise. And so finally, in the final hour, he gets the answers, but he also has to perform one last mission, which is a little difficult because the book starts with him in prison.
Is it possible to come in the last book and having not read the others?
It actually is. Each book
you lay the groundwork.
in the story. It tells you what happens.
So where do you come up with these ideas? Where do they hit you? They hit you in the morning? You were going to sleep? You're just driving around?
It's the thing that happens is the ideas keep coming. There are always these ideas in my head, but what happens is a character occurs to you who fits the idea, because it makes a big difference whether the hero who goes out to kill a dragon is Superman or Frodo. That changes the story.
Right.
And when you find that perfect hero for the story, then you know you've really got something.
And who do you base this character West on?
Well, he's kind of an amalgam of a lot of people I've known. He's a karate guy, and I'm a karate guy, so I use some of my experience there. There's a little bit of kids that I've known because my son was the same age when I was writing the books. So I put them together. I don't really base anybody on real people because it's just too easy, and it doesn't give you a chance to explore them and create.
But the sense of it is this is an everyman who's sort of thrust into an exceptional situation.
Well, that's the whole thing. See, he's a kid he's a patriotic kid, he's a Christian kid, and everything is taken away from him, so he loses his sense of what his values are based on. And he has to kind of re-find out what the bottom line is, of what he believes in, and what he's willing to die for.
Good.
Well, we were having a debate earlier this week. I'm going to jump into movies just because it's fun.
Please, yeah.
We had a debate earlier this week about Dirty Dancing being remade. And
remade again, right?
Right. Yeah.
I didn't even know it was remade.
They already did Havana Nights, of course. I have a deep knowledge of the Dirty Dancing genre. But
don't hold it against her.
But what's the deal with Hollywood
it's so,
and the no ideas?
It's so out of ideas that they're just going to remake the same film over and over and over again.
It's come down to one film that they'll make it time and time again.
And this is, one of the things that I gripe about a lot is I gripe about the political correctness and leftism that permeates Hollywood. But this is part of this problem. It's connected to this problem, because if you can't speak the truth, if you can't describe the world as it is, you can't tell new stories. If you can't talk about the dangers that we face and the tensions between us and the disagreements, and give a fair balance of visions of what America is about, you can't tell meaningful stories. So you just go back and tell other stories that worked 20 years ago.
Is there a chance ever that flailing about would lead to the fact that maybe outside writers who have written books that are interesting, they just latch on to perhaps new writers and new ideas, just by default?
That is the other side of it. Is part of it is the fear. If you bring in somebody new, how do you know it's going to work? We know Dirty Dancing was once a hit. There's some chance it could be a hit again. That's just pure cowardice, creative cowardice.
But do you get any pushback from your publishers or from people potentially making movies out of your work, or TV series?
Yeah, for my politics.
Yeah,
let me tell you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being a conservative in Hollywood, it's like it's like growing up in a gay family and finding out you're an evangelical Christian. It's like, although that probably doesn't happen all that much. But you walk into rooms to sell your wares. You're just a salesman, basically saying, "Here, I've got a story to tell. Pay me so I can write this story and we can make a movie out of it." and the first words out of their mouth will be, "Boy, is that George W. Bush an idiot or what?" Or is Barack Obama a genius or what? And I'm a big mouth, so I'll always say, no.
I was in L.A. not long ago for a couple of weeks, and I noticed something that's very similar about L.A. and Washington. We talk about Washington being sort of a superheated bubble, where we all talk, a certain way, and we all think a certain way, and we all hyper-focus on things that are important in Washington, but not really important when you get beyond the Washington Beltway. And the same thing happens in sort of the opposite direction in Los Angeles. It's all sort of very insular, and there's its own little superheated bubble where they all see the world in a different way, but the same.
Yes, it's so true, and it's different than when Hollywood had its golden age. I mean, those guys wanted to entertain the country. They loved America, and they wanted to tell stories that Americans like to hear. These guys kind of despise. A lot of them despise, what they now call flyover country. I don't understand how you can entertain people if you don't like them. If you don't want them to be happy and amused.
Maybe the reason that movies are not doing as well is because they're out of touch with so many people in America.
That's absolutely true. That's exactly right.
But one of the things I never understood, I mean, it's still a company, a major corporation that are making these movies or publishing books, and they need to make money. And if you can make money off of conservative ideas, and I think you can in today's day and age, we've seen that with certain movies, then why not embrace it if it's going to bring more money into your back pocket?
One of the biggest mythologies about Hollywood is that it's all about the money. I mean, just to give an example, Mel Gibson took $25 million out of his pocket, made The Passion of the Christ, made $600 million. Wow. If it was all about the money, the Book of Acts would be in the can by now. They'd be making it. But they don't. It is about the ideology. They made all those anti-Iraq war films that all bombed. They kept making them. Not one film, not one, that had the other point of view.
Right. Well, and as somebody who's been open about your beliefs in Hollywood, what's your advice for young conservatives who are trying to get a start? Because I was in news business, which is arguably, it's very liberal, but maybe less liberal than Hollywood, and I just sort of kept my mouth shut and covered sports. What's your advice to them?
Well, it's funny. Andrew Breitbart and I frequently have had this back and forth where he believes that conservatives should infiltrate Hollywood, work their way up, and then take it from within.
And they'd say, "Surprise!
Exactly.
I'm a conservative."
Exactly. I feel that you have to say what you believe. You have to be outspoken and shame them basically into saying, we're going to tell that story. That's too good a story to leave behind. I also think that it would be nice if some conservatives with money would step up and start to, because there's a strain of Philistinism in conservatism. They don't care about the culture, and they should.
And if you're making $600 million on a movie that has Christian beliefs, why not invest in a company that can make those movies?
Really? Jesus, the sequel.
Hey,
Jesus, too.
Can you stick around for a few minutes?
Absolutely.
Because I want to ask you about the controversy that's popped up about the movie going to be made about the raid to get bin Laden, the Navy SEALs, the timing of that, and get your thoughts on that. Andrew Klavan is our guest. The book is The Final Hour, the final installment of the Homelander series. We'll be back and get his take on this controversial subject that we certainly got into yesterday. WMAL, Brian Neiman, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson with the Morning Majority. Andrew Klavan is our guest this morning, award-winning author, screenwriter. You can read him at Pajamas Media, right there, pajamasmedia.com. Also author of the book The Final Hour. The Final Hour. And we talked a lot about yesterday, since you know Hollywood very well, this movie that is going to be made about the raid to get Osama bin Laden, and the fact that it is coming out a few weeks before the election. Sony is producing the movie, apparently. They are big donors of Barack Obama.
They've raised money for him.
Raised a lot of money for them. How does this happen?
This is actually a moral step up for Hollywood.
Okay.
Because, I'll tell you why. Because during the Clinton administration, they actually rewrote his presidency in order to help get him reelected. Right. I mean, Clinton was an adulterer, so they made the American president in which he was a widower having an affair. So that was, it was different. Clinton was a draft dodger. They made Independence Day, and they made him an Air Force pilot.
Okay, all right.
During the Bush administration, of course, they made all these Iraq war films in which our soldiers were rapists and murderers and terrible people. So at least this actually happened. At least Obama actually had something to do with the killing of Osama bin Laden.
See how fun low expectations can be?
Yeah. Exactly. But think about this for a minute, okay? The Road to 9/11, a miniseries that Bill Clinton didn't like, has been banned from DVD release because of pressure brought by the Clintons and their
Really?
friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's
didn't know it was banned. Wow.
The Kennedy miniseries, which was very nice to the Kennedys, was knocked off its original cable station and put on an obscure cable station because of pressure from the Kennedy family. Hold your breath and wait for them to make the movie called The Surge, in which the brave President George W. Bush stands up to everybody and wins the war in Iraq, basically single-handedly. It's not going to happen. So it's really, as I always say in Hollywood, it's not the movies that get made, it's the movies that don't get made that are really important.
All right, what do you know about Catherine Bigelow? We had Katie McFarland on yesterday. She said that the movie Hurt Locker that she made, the one big beef that she had was that she actually took a Humvee into a Palestinian neighborhood and essentially made it seem like the Americans were there to get a realistic, enraged reaction from the Palestinians.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what your take on her as a director. Hurt Locker was a great movie.
Hurt Locker was a great movie, and the only movie that showed that we were the good guys. Yeah. I mean, even though it didn't support the war, it did say that we essentially, just by our civilization, were the good guys. And so I always respected that, and I thought the first half of the movie was really terrific. She's a good director. She's a talented director. I'm sure, I don't know her politics, but just judging by that movie, I would bet they're to the left.
Yeah. Well, that was our feeling yesterday. Was like, well, it's a pro-American theme here.
Yes, I'm torn.
It's a pro-troops movie.
This is what it takes to get a pro-troops movie.
It's just the timing that smells bad.
That's what I said. The only way you get a pro-troops, genuinely pro-troops movie, great story about victory, is if it's a giant commercial for Barack Obama.
Exactly.
So that's how you get it.
That is what it takes. That's right.
But the one problem is that it's not necessarily the movie. Is what you're going to have in the weeks leading up to the movie, promotions for the movie in the movie theaters, perhaps even on TV and radio. Of we're getting Osama bin Laden. You could kind of see like the picture of Barack Obama, giving the go-ahead, let's do it.
I think he'll be in a ninja costume, rappelling down the Hindu Kush. I think. But I'm a little bit dubious about how big an effect this is going to have. I mean, people know better than to listen to Hollywood.
Well, yeah, it's fairly obvious as a ploy at this point.
What do you like out there these days on TV and in the movies?
I have to say I think the best stuff being done right now is on TV. The reason being that writers were treated so badly in the movie business that the really good ones went into TV. I love the show Dexter. It's very bloody, but it's awfully good, And Mad Men, of course, is a very good show. And there's a lot of even the shows, the kind of silly network shows like The Mentalist, are much better than they used to be. If you watch, I'm an old crime writer, so I watch the plots, and the plots are just better constructed. So most of the good stuff I'm seeing is on television, but I did like Captain America.
Isn't it funny when you go back and look at some of the old shows, how they're not quite as good as you remember them?
They're really not.
I mean, because we really have the craft of storytelling and making films and has really improved over the years.
It has. And better writers are just doing it.
Even when you go back and look at Star Wars, which Neiman just adores.
It's a great movie. I'm sorry.
I mean, you go, wow,
all 6 of them.
That's sort of a bad special effect.
I do have to admit to you, the last movie I saw was The Smurfs.
No.
That's the way it is.
And it blew, right? So.
Andrew Klavan, hey, thanks for coming in. Best of luck with the book, The Final Hour.
Thanks very much. Great talking to you.